Hey yarn lovers, thanks for tuning in to the Champagne and Kiviot vlog. This is an episode that I recorded actually back in January of this year, but then Unravel happened, I was traveling, somehow the episode was like 90% done, but just didn't quite get finished. Now with so much of the world has changed since I recorded it, and we're spending a lot of time at home right now, just sort of sheltering in place and hunkering down because of the coronavirus. So I thought I would dust this episode off and get it ready for all of you and maybe push reset on this year, and hopefully you'll still find the content relevant. I think it's, looking back on it, there's definitely stuff in it that I'm gonna be getting back to. So here it is. Hello yarn lovers, Happy New Year and welcome back to the Champagne and Kiviot vlog. I have missed you very much, but I just wanted to get right back to it with 2020 and just let's get on with it. So for 2020, I wanted to get back to doing something that I had done a few years ago. I had decided to think about a word or a phrase that was what the year was going to embody for me, and that was just going to be something that I could use as a touchstone. So I'm not hugely into resolutions or anything like that. I think we're all adults and we're going to do what we need to do. I'm 45. I already am trying to, exercise more and eat healthier. So I don't really need to make any, or I don't feel the need to make any resolutions to, do something extra special beyond what I'm doing. So you do you, and however that works for you. But I do feel that one of the things that I really like about a new year is the idea of making goals or coming up with a word that is kind of a touchstone that I can refer back to later on in the year at different sort of check-in points. So my birthday's in the summer. I find that a natural check-in point for what is it that I wanted to accomplish. Most of the goals that I have tend to be around projects. So last year I did the make 9, or at least I chose 9 projects that I wanted to make, and I ended up making 3 of them. I started a couple more, and I'm not beating myself up about the fact that I didn't finish them. So really it was kind of, these are things that I think that I might like to make over the rest of the year, and if they happen, great. If they don't, knowing me, I'm going to completely be distracted by lots of shiny new things, whether it's a yarn or a project, new patterns. Designers are fabulous and they're always coming out with new stuff. There's also knit-alongs or crochet-alongs, and I'm a bit of a joiner, so I always like to get involved with those too. Plus, I've got some big plans for my knitting machine this year, so we'll see what happens. So this year, I've decided to call this year, 2020, the year of making joy. So everything that I'm going to be making is for me or to make somebody happy, and making things just makes me happy, so it makes sense that this would be a year all about making joy. So it can be as selfish or as selfless as I would like it to be. I don't know if you guys ever do anything like that, but I would love to hear about whether or not you've chosen a word for 2020 and what that word is and what kind of goals you've set this year. So something I haven't done before is talk to you about the things that I'm working on. So in true joiner fashion, earlier this week, the Dahlia Cowl, which is the crochet along by Lucy from Attic 24, kicked off, and I really love the colors If you remember from the episode where I was on retreat with Lucy in France, we talked about the color wheel and a warm palette versus a cool palette. So Lucy has put together a very, very warm palette, all based on the colors of dahlias. And she's got an amazing sort of spike stitch, stripe, and color wash versions of a new blanket. And this is a crochet along, and something that, Lucy has shared with me, that the winter months are always a little bit harder on people, and I think it's really tough. The weather is sort of getting us down, and she always looks forward to this crochet along every year that she organizes, and people are just really encouraging of everyone, and it's a great thing to sort of do and interact with people online and social media. I love the colors that Lucy has picked. But when you're doing a blanket with 15 colors, that can be kind of expensive for yarn, and depending on what the size is of the blanket that you want to make. So Lucy put together a great palette. The yarn that she used is Stylecraft DK. I have some of that in my stash, but it is 100% acrylic yarn. And me personally, we're trying to be a little more eco-conscious around the house, and so I'm trying to not consume as much acrylic or sort of seek out those kinds of fibers. So I wanted to do something with the stash that I already have. So I tossed my stash. I've found some Tough Love sock from Sweet Georgia, and I have started the crochet. I know it's very, yes. So the yarn called for is Stylecraft DK. It's a DK weight. I'm using something that's 4-ply, so I did a little swatch and I did some maths. And I figured out that if I do the cast on for the lap blanket size, that it is going to come out the baby blanket size. And the instructions, Lucy says in her instructions that the color wash version is really set up in terms of a certain length for the single twin bed size, and it's just based on the number of repeats. So she says in the instructions it won't work for a smaller size, which is a bit kind of gutting for me. But I was looking at the way the color wash is laid out, and I think if I reduce a couple of stripes, it looks like it's 8 stripes per color. So if I reduce that to 6, I think I might be okay. I'm just gonna kind of wing it and see how it goes. But I'm really loving how it's turning out already. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. There's only 15 stripes per week. So fingers crossed that I can actually keep up with it. Right. So the other thing that I've been working on over the Christmas holidays is, this is not going to look very much, guys, because it's gray. It's also stockinette, so it's pretty dull. But what this is some deep stash that it's not that deep, but kind of deep stash of Shibui Knits Dune. And Dune has been discontinued, but it was a baby alpaca, baby alpaca, baby camel, and silk. So yeah, it doesn't suck. And held with Shibui Silk Cloud. So really, really lovely kind of halo, and I have a picture of it here. Ta-da! Very elegant, kind of just simple mock kind of turtleneck. Collar, a little bit wide, not quite a bateau neckline, but really big long cuffs and a long sort of cuff at the hem, slightly cropped, sort of hitting at about the hip bone length. So because I have not figured out how to use the ribber for my knitting machine, I hand knit the rib by myself, and as with other projects that I've done, I hand knit a swatch to the gauge in the pattern, and then I experimented with different tensions on the machine to get, and I was using the bulky machine that I have, so the Brother 260. What I did was I did different swatches at different tensions to sort of match my swatch, or match my tension on the machine to the gauge that I got by hand knitting. And that way it meant when I got up to the shaping for the neck, you go across, anyway, because you cast off in the middle, that when I was doing that, I just thought that's a good point to take it off the machine and just do the finishing by hand. So I have knit the front and the back on the machine and the sleeves, and it was getting a bit close in terms of running out of yarn. So I've had to unravel my swatch, and almost had a yarn emergency. Was definitely thinking that I was going to be playing yarn chicken, but I am now in terms doing the folded hem bind off, and this will be done soon. So once this is done, I literally just have to block and assemble everything, and I will have a new jumper in time to wear to Vogue Knitting Live in New York. So I'm going there later in the month and really looking forward to that. And I think this will be the perfect travel piece. It's simple, it's elegant, I can dress it up or down, and it'll be, I don't know, I will be New York chic, I hope. Anyway, so that's one of the other things that I've been working on. In terms of goals, things that I want to knit, my Make 9, they also include the knit along for Unravel. So this is the show that I'm organizing at work. So late last summer, I took a job with an arts and community centre outside London in Surrey, in Farnham, and I am the events coordinator for craft, and one of the things that they have a robust craft festival program, and they put on 5 craft festivals a year, one of which is Unravel, which is one of the biggest yarn shows, independent yarn shows in the southeast of England. And it happens in February every year, and it's kind of like the kickoff of the calendar year's yarn shows. So it's a 3-day yarn show, and there's so many independent vendors and amazing international lineup of teachers. And this year we thought, hey, it would be really fun if, kind of like the Rhinebeck sweater, you know how everybody knits something to wear to Rhinebeck, if we had a knit along or crochet along where people were casting on and working on something together. Personal challenge, not a specific project, but something that they could wear to the show. So I've kind of cast on for 2 things. I did cast on for Novelli, but that's my knitting project. But my swatch, my gauge is not the pattern gauge, so I'm kind of on hold with that. It's kind of parked, and I need to re-swatch that. And the other project that I've cast on is a crochet project, and it's my first crochet jumper. I have never crocheted a jumper, but I've been really inspired with the crochet, and kind of bit the bug with Lucy and the girls who were on the retreat last year. So looking forward to that. Anyway, that's what I've been working on. So one of the other things I wanted to do with this episode was talk about the fact that we are not making resolutions, but we are setting goals for our projects for the year. And one of the things that I find really helpful for that, and a great way to sort of decide what I'm going to be working on, is to toss my stash. And yeah, it can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming, especially if you've ever organized your stash and then let it go, or if you've never organized your stash and you've got things in different places. And for me, I have had an organized stash in the past, and I have been trying to get reorganized, but it's I've been in that little bit of overwhelm, and it makes it hard for me to sort of go into the home office where I have my stash and just sort of find what I'm looking for or really enjoy what I have. So one of the things that I wanted to get back to this year in terms of a goal, and certainly my goal for January, is to catalog projects that I've cast on for, so maybe some WIPs, things that I finished that I never really entered into Ravelry, sort of quick things, and then all of the yarn stash that I have accumulated since the last time I did a big sort of cataloging. And this is kind of a big thing for me, but it doesn't have to be for you. I'm going to tell you what it is that I do. It's actually really simple. It's just a matter of finding the time. So I'm not sort of sitting down and saying, oh, I have to do all of this today. But I am sort of giving myself the month to get organized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling things out, seeing what I have logged in Ravelry, and then inputting the rest of the stuff. And I'm going to do this in batches, and I'm also going to do it sort of by box. So the way my stash is set up is I've got some cubes, and the cubes have the yarn in them, and the yarns are in plastic bags because it's London and sometimes there's moths. So I keep everything. This is also a really great thing to do. Even if you don't care about organizing your stash, having a stash toss once or twice a year, ideally every 6 months, just gives you an opportunity to sort of mix everything around, check on the state of things, and make sure there's no little critters in there and that everything is all tickety-boo. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. But let me take you into the office and show you how I get organized with the stash. Normally when I am in the office at home, I've tidied things up a lot more, but I thought that I would pull back the curtain a little bit so that you can see the state that it normally is. I've been doing a lot of work this year trying to sort of tame my stash and get things into a state where I feel not overwhelmed, because that's really the problem that I've had with my stash. And it's a bit of an occupational hazard, you know, working for really great yarn brands and visiting yarn shops and going to yarn shows and organizing yarn shows, always seeing stuff that's really new and great and I get excited about. But then stuff comes home and it gets put away and then it's kind of forgotten about. So one of the things that's really great about sort of the new year is the opportunity to sort of toss my stash, reassess what I have, rediscover what I have, and fall in love with it all over again. So that's really the point of just logging the stash. So this was something that I did before I moved to the UK. Shout out to my friend Lara, who came over one day and just started logging stuff into Ravelry. If you have a friend who can help you do this, it's always easier, and then maybe you can help them organize their stash, something that you know, can be a bit social. One of the things, so what Lara did was she came over and she just sort of took the yarn and the ball bands and started entering it into Ravelry. So right now here in the office, I've got the desk behind me, so I'm not on the desktop, but I've been doing machine knitting over the Christmas holidays, and I've got my little machine knitting table set up, got my laptop here, and I've opened it up into Ravelry onto my personal stash page. So the reason I use Ravelry is because, I mean, I think everybody uses Ravelry to a certain extent, right? You might not use all the chat functionality, but definitely you've probably gone there to look at patterns or find some inspiration. And I find that having my stash logged where I've got all my patterns means it's really easy to sort of connect things together. What's also really great is that, sorry, I'm just going to remind me tomorrow to do my auto update. One of the things that's really great is that you can also export your stash into a spreadsheet if you want to move things around or see what like the actual yardage is of stuff that you have, or if I know somebody who organizes their stash and her stash is kind of like a retirement plan. So she's, knowing that once she's retired, she may not have the same kind of, disposable income to spend on great yarn. So she's been saving her stash for when she's in retirement and buying really nice things now. And she puts like a dollar value on it. And so because she has quite an extensive stash, she has downloaded the spreadsheet and printed it out, and it's like a rider on her insurance because she's put the value of what the replacement value is of that yarn, which is really, really intense. But if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. So the thing that with organizing the stash is that there's absolutely no pressure. You just sort of want to do it with you. So the other thing that's really great is if you do this sort of once a year or maybe every 6 months, you can go through and refamiliarize yourself with stuff that you have. So for instance, I've got everything in my stash automatically sorts by, I think by weight is what I have it sorted by right now. So it starts with lace. When I was a new knitter, I bought a lot of lace weight because I thought that that was good value. I was like, oh, it might be $20, but I'm getting 1,000 yards. So I'm like, wow, I can do a lot with that. Yeah. And as I became more experienced, and I was like, wow, I really hate working with lace. So I have a lot of it. So as I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, there's some stuff that's really, really old. Not sure I love it anymore. Maybe it could go into the destash pile. Or maybe there's something else that I could mix it with. Or could I carry 2 strands together? Oh, that might be more interesting. It's a thicker yarn. People like Stephen West has a lot of really cool patterns, like the blanket that I did that I can't remember the name of. And different shawls and things where you're sort of using up odds and ends in your stash as a way of, falling in love with them again. So there's even things here like this Blue Moon Fiber Arts Silk Mo. I think I have that wrapped up, like wound up, and I've been using it on a project. So I have to sort of update that it's in use now. So this is a really good way of sort of, I've already identified a couple of things that I could be updating in my stash. Okay, so I've got yarn for a new project. I don't know where the ball band is because I already wound it up and I've been swatching, and this is for Novelli, which is one of the projects on the top 9 or make 9 that I want to do this year. So I'm just going to go to add to stash, and I got this from a local yarn store, sort of. Bought this from Sweet Georgia Yarns, and name of the stash yarn is Tough Love Sock, and it's from Sweet Georgia Yarns. And if you start typing stuff, it definitely updates it. Store name, I'm just going to put Sweet Georgia Yarns, and I bought it in Canada, in Vancouver. So you don't need to get this detailed if you don't want to, but then just click continue. And so it says, there's all these different types of Tough Love Sock, which is what I've said that the yarn is. So I can choose, I'm going to just choose the generic Tough Love Sock because this is not the prismatic mini skeins or the Party of 5 mini skeins. So choosing that. So colorway, and this is, I don't have to have the label because I remember what it is. This is rose gold. Oops, let's spell it right. Closest color is pink. Okay, and because I've identified what the yarn brand is, Ravelry has got it in their database. They found it for me, and they've pre-populated the fields with how many meters and how many grams the skein is. So I've only got one, so that's fine. Purchased at Sweet Georgia Yarns, I have no idea. So I can say I purchased it in 2019. I'm going to say June, because my mom brought it for me when she was visiting. Okay, so in that case, May. And I don't know the exact day. And I could put the amount, but I'm not really going to worry about it. Dye lot, well, if I hadn't gotten rid of the ball bands, then I could, oh, actually, hang on. Might have the ball bands. Okay, this is what happens. So, just in case I ran out, I can put in the die lot, 7, 2, 9. And that way, God forbid anything happens and I run out and want to try and match it, then I could see if there was somebody else who had logged their yarn into stash, and maybe I could find the same dye lot. Now the thing with Sweet Georgia is it's a hand-dyed yarn, so it's always, the thing with hand-dyed yarn is that you always want to buy the amount or slightly more than the amount, just in case, to make sure that you have enough to finish your project, because there's always the chance that something isn't going to match. Now Sweet Georgia, they do dye lots, and they have an amazing reputation for consistency of color time and time and time again, because they have their formulas. But the thing that their dye lot identifies is, when it was dyed, who the dyer was, and so they can sort of trace things back, and they do that for their own quality control, which is why they're a really great hand dyer to buy from. So I'm going to tag this as 2019, because then I know that's where I bought it, and I'm going to say stored in. Now this is where you sort of have to make a decision about what your storage style is. You can see behind me, I've gone with the very traditional IKEA route of storage. And so I've got the old Expedite, or I think now it's called Kallax, 5x5 unit. We've put a hack in it so that my knitting machines fit. And then I've also got the 4x2 up top, and that's got fabric and that kind of stuff in. But I've got 10 of these gray bins here, and I've got them all sorted by weight. So lace weight, 4-ply, sport, DK, worsted, Aran, and chunky and super chunky. And obviously there's some yarns that I have more of one particular weight than another, and those are, so there might be like 2 for 4-ply or 2 for DK, so on. There's only 1 for lace, because I've been trying to de-stash that. So that's what that is. And then the orange bins I've got filled with things like my ball winder and a Swift and, different knitting needle sets, kind of project bags and things that are works in progress, that kind of thing. So if I was entering this into my stash, I would say, stored in 4-ply box 1 of 2, something like that. And you can see I've got the little sort of gift tags on the outside of the box. I haven't actually labeled them yet because I'm still sort of figuring out which is in which box, and then I'll be able to label them and sort of say this is the 4-ply box or this is the DK weight box. But anyway, I'm just going to say stored in project bag, because this is something that's already in for a project. And then under notes, I can say purchased for Novelli. And then I know that I've already earmarked that for a project. I could also put in, this is hand spun, if it was my hand spun. Anyway, so I'm going to save my stash. Now, it has here no featured photo. So what I always have done, and when Lara was helping me, this is what she did, is she came along and she entered all of the stuff into my stash. I did some of it too. And the thing that worked when we were doing it together was that Lara did a lot of the entering on the computer and then would hand me the skein, and I would go and photograph it. So I found that really easy to just sort of get all of the stuff on the computer done first and then go do all the photographing. So what you're doing is called batching, and it's just to sort of make things a little more efficient for yourself, because you can enter this, then go take a photo, then you have to download the photo off your camera and upload it into Ravelry, and it's like, let's just get all this stuff entered, then take all the photographs, upload everything all in one shot, and then you can, you know, upload all those photos and then just basically get them all entered in, go into each entry and enter the photos, right? So that's Ravelry. Now, taking photos, bit of a pain. You can see that it's dark out now. This is what happens when you're shooting in January and you've lost the light, mainly because I went for a run today instead of vlogging earlier. But I wanted to show you that you don't need a super fancy camera setup or one of those like photo light boxes. And this is just a really easy way. You don't have to do a flat lay. I mean, you can. What I used to do when I lived in Toronto, when I cataloged my stash the first time, was I just had a really nice wood plank workbench and, you know, bare wall behind it, and I would just plunk the yarn down and take a photo. And I just did it so that I had consistent background and stuff. And if you actually go back to my stash, you can see that a lot of those photos are like that. So we've got just this sort of plain sort of wood kind of background. Now, one of the things that's really great, I find having a really neutral background is good, because when I'm looking at the photos later, if I want to do any color correcting or I go back to look at the photos, I'm like, oh, what was that color? That having it on a neutral background really helps, because then I can imagine more easily the yarn as the project maybe that I'm thinking of. So I'm going to take this yarn and I'm going to show you this really cool setup. My husband found this on an online tutorial. If I can find the link, it was just some really cool photo hacks, things that you can do by yourself at home without a lot of money. So let me show you what that is. This is, I think this is really great because it's super cheap and really accessible. So everybody remembers making presentations and posters and that kind of thing for science class or whatever when they were in high school. So really just 2 big pieces of foam core and you're good to go. The second thing would be a north-facing window. I'm really lucky that the home office in our flat faces north, and we get really great light in here because there's, you know, first thing in the morning, it's this side of the building is in shade, so it's quite a diffuse light, and it's just really, really soft and easy. Also, our desk faces the window, so it's really easy for me to sort of clear things off and get my foam core out and get ready to take some photos, whether it's a flat lay or just doing stuff like taking photos for my stash. We have a second computer, and normally it's here, but I've moved that out of the way. And because of my partner's work, he has a second monitor, and that sort of swings on this big arm, but I'm going to use it to my advantage. Normally in the past, what I've done is I've just gotten a sort of an L bracket kind of thing from B&Q or your hardware store and some big clamps, and just clipped the foam core to that so that it's nice and stable. Okay, so here you can see I've got one foam core here and one here and ready to take some photos, except that I've got this horrible seam happening right here. And you could probably remove that with Photoshop or in post-production, but really, like, this is a photo for your stash, so why? But a really easy thing, and this is the thing that they would probably have with one of those photo cubes, is a piece of stiff poster paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put this here. Got a little bit of masking tape or washi tape because it doesn't leave a mark. And I'm just going to sort of attach that there. And so you can see that the poster paper creates a nice sort of soft, there's no seam there anymore, and I can grab my yarn and plunk it down here. And in fact, I even have a pencil mark here from the last time I was doing some shooting because I was photographing some yarn for a client, and there was multiple colors, and I wanted all of the skeins to be in exactly the same place every single time for the framing. So that was my pencil mark. Anyway, can hide that with the yarn, and there we go. So I've got my phone, and this works really great for sort of a flat lay and however else, you know, whatever else you want to shoot. Anyway, got my phone, and I'm just going to come around behind here. Now I've got lots of shadows and stuff happening right now, but you can see that it's just really easy to take the photo, and I don't have any sort of seams or anything in the background. It's just white, it's clean, and it's just going to show off the color and the yarn really to the best of the ability for when it's in my stash. And that way, when I'm going back through my stash and I'm looking for something, just being able to see the pure color and the yarn, I'll be able to visualize the project that I might, you know, be searching for and see if that will work. Anyway, that's sort of the photography hack that I wanted to share with you. And like the you know, the batching that we talked about earlier with entering everything into Ravelry first, or a spreadsheet, or however you choose to catalog your stash, then I would do all the photos in a batch as well and get them all uploaded en masse to Ravelry, and then add them to the files that I've already, or the listing that I've already created there. So, and it doesn't have to be caked skein, could be, you know, an unwound skein. I would love to hear what your hacks are or special tips for organizing your stash. As you can see, it's quite overflowing behind me, but I'm really hoping to get a handle on it this year and really feel not so overwhelmed by my stash, and just really value it again. I remember years ago my mom saying that, you know, spending money on stash wasn't a waste of money unless it sort of went into stash and then never got used and never came out. And that's just really resonated with me, you know, particularly in the way I think a lot of people have been thinking lately about sort of consumerism and fast fashion and just acquiring stuff. And I have a lot of great stuff, and I really want to celebrate it and use it. So that's what this year is going to be all about for me. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining me once again on the Champagne and Caveat vlog. I'm gonna try and do a lot better at vlogging more consistently this year. I know, famous last words, but hey, I seem to not be commuting right now and have a lot more time, just like all of us do. So anyway, stay safe, keep taking solace in your craft and your making. I hope you found my tips helpful, and if you want to see more of this, please do leave a note in the comments or click the thumbs up button and let me know that you like this video. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.